Today we're going to cover part one in a three-part series on the state of America's beef industry. Now, beef is a centerpiece of today's discussion about consumer affordability. And you've probably heard that today's high beef prices are the result of a recent widespread drought that reduced the size of the domestic cattle herd and the recent closure of the Mexican border due to the threat of New World screwworm that deprived the U.S. of previously available foreign cattle supplies. Now, this combination is said to have reduced overall beef supplies in the face of strong beef demand, resulting in all-time record beef prices. You probably also heard that this situation materialized without warning and was primarily caused by these two unforeseen but temporary circumstances, and that their effect on beef prices can be mitigated by importing more beef and cattle from around the world. Well, this is incorrect. Today's extreme beef supply and demand imbalance is a manifestation of decades of failed policies that have dismantled the cattle industry's competitive infrastructure, increased America's dependency on imported food, hollowed out America's rural communities, and threatened our nation's food security. The recent drought and border closure has merely illuminated the vulnerability of America's food supply chain. So let's take a closer look at what is the single largest segment of American agriculture. It generates roughly $100 billion in cash receipts annually, provides Americans with life-sustaining protein, and serves as the economic cornerstones for rural communities across the nation. That segment, of course, is the U.S. cattle industry. Now, the cattle industry does not receive government price supports, so the production of beef is not influenced by government price incentives, as is the production of other major commodities such as corn, soybeans, wheat, and cotton. Instead, the cattle industry relies exclusively on competitive market signals to balance supply with demand through the expansion and contraction of the U.S. cow herd. This created what is known as the cattle cycle. When supplies fall short of demand, cattle prices increase and the cow herd enters an expansion phase. But when supplies meet or exceed demand, cattle prices fall and the cow herd enters the liquidation phase. The cattle cycle has historically lasted 10 to 12 years. Involving 6 to 7 years of expansion and 3 to 4 years of liquidation. This cattle cycle is the industry's bellwether indicator of its competitiveness. And because cattle themselves have the longest biological cycle of any farmed animal, the cattle industry cannot respond quickly to an increase in beef demand. It takes about 3 years from the time the decision is made to begin expanding the herd before a new animal can be ready for slaughter. And since the only ingredient in beef is cattle, consumer beef prices likewise fluctuate with the cattle cycle, rising during the expansion phase and falling during liquidation. And so it is that consumer beef prices and the cattle farmer and rancher's cattle prices were driven by competitive market forces. At least they were until just over a generation ago. So let's go back to just over a generation ago, to 1980. Back then, the beef packing industry was widely dispersed, and the four-firm concentration level was 36%, meaning the four largest beef packers controlled 36% of the fed cattle market. And at that time, we had 1.3 million cattle farmers and ranchers who maintained 37 million mother cows. And back then, competitive market forces allocated each dollar consumers spent on beef to all the participants in the supply chain. And under the competitive markets allocation, cattle farmers and ranchers received 63 cents of each consumer beef dollar, and the packer and retailers together received 37 cents. And for consumers, the spread between the farm gate price of cattle and the consumer price of beef was about 88 cents per pound. Now fast forward through a generation to 2021. The four-firm concentration jumped to 85%, meaning the four largest beef packers that dominate the fed cattle market were now a tight oligopoly. And our cattle industry had shrunk considerably, losing over half of all cattle farms and ranches and about 9.5 million mother cows. The allocation of the consumer's beef dollar had also changed by 2021. Whereas a generation ago, the cattle farmer and rancher was allocated 63 cents and the packer and retailer shared 37 cents, now it was the packer and retailer who shared 63 cents and the cattle farmer and rancher received only 37 cents. What was once a competitive allocation of each consumer beef dollar had now been flipped on its head. And for the consumer, the spread between the farm gate price of cattle and the consumer price of beef jumped from 88 cents per pound only a generation ago to $4.58 per pound in 2021. With that, I'm Bill Bullard with RCAF USA, the voice of the independent cattle and sheep producer in the United States of America. Have a productive week, and thank you.